At 12 o'clock, number 3, Michigan, which is 11-0, traveling to number 2, Ohio State, who's 11-0. Ohio State favored by 7.5 points on Fox on the biggest game of the day. We have 3 huge games in the early window, right? This is the biggest game of the day by far. Now, there are supposed to be closer games. For instance, Notre Dame USC is only 5.5 point spread. But Michigan Ohio State is going to be a game that likely determines who's going to the playoffs and who's not. Depending on what happens the rest of the day, it could turn out both these teams make the playoffs. Like, for instance, if USC and Clemson both lose today, we have our 4 teams set, right? Like, we have all 4 of Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, and TCU. We have our 4 teams going if Clemson and USC both lose today. But if Clemson and USC both don't lose today, if the loser of this game is going to be sitting at home being very scared next weekend in the conference championship game. They're going to be desperately rooting for whoever plays USC. Probably either Oregon or UCLA. Although, yeah, Oregon or UCLA probably. And you're going to be desperately rooting for UNC if you're whoever's the loser of this game. J.J. McCarthy from Michigan has gone 165 and 247, thrown for 1,952 yards, 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Blake Corum on the ground has had 245 carries for 1,457 yards and 18 touchdowns. And Ronnie Bell on the ground has had 48 catches for 641 yards and 2 touchdowns. C.J. Stroud through the air has gone 204, 307, thrown for 2,991 yards, 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Mayan Williams on the ground has had 117 carries for 783 yards and 13 touchdowns, and Marvin Harrison Jr. has had 65 catches for 1,037 yards and 11 touchdowns. Michigan leads the series all-time, weirdly enough, 59-51. Last game went to Michigan in 2021. Last win at Ohio State, though, for Michigan was in 2000. It has been a hot second since they've gone to Columbus. 1999, 2000 was the last year they repeated wins on Ohio State. It's going to be an interesting game, right? These are 2 teams I think that are the best in the entire country, right? Like, I'm on the Ohio State-Michigan. Whoever wins this game wins the national championship. That is my opinion. These are the 2 best teams in the country, and they're going to duke it out. My opinion, Michigan is the best team in the country. And I think it's also a matchup issue, right? Michigan is a great matchup against Ohio State. Ohio State has a weak run defense. Penn State exposed that. Northwestern exposed that. And a couple weeks ago, Maryland exposed that, right? I think a big issue they're going to have in this game is trying to stop Michigan's elite ground game. I think a big issue that Michigan might have is Blake Corum's injury. I don't know how serious that is, and if he doesn't play in this game, that could be a huge, huge loss to a Michigan team that desperately needs that playmaking threat. It's like he's a Heisman candidate. Like, you can't lose Blake Corum. This is basically a playoff game. To be fair, whoever loses this game still has a shot at the playoffs. They still have a legitimate chance at the playoffs. It's much, much lower if you lose this game, though. I think you're going to be in a tough spot, in my opinion, if you lose this football game. If you're Michigan or Ohio State and your chance to make the playoffs, you're fighting an uphill battle. I think Michigan wins this one. I think they go on the road, and I think they beat Ohio State in Columbus for the first time since 2000. I think they're the much better overall football team. Give me Michigan to win and cover on the road.